Hello, we were super privileged in this episode to chat with the DICE audio team responsible for the amazing work on Battlefield 6. Mary, David, and Gonçalo joined us with their combined many years of experience working on the franchise, so suffice to say they had a lot to cover. We don't shy away from the details of the audio systems for the game that drive an immersive experience, and we also talk at lengths about balancing the audio for competitive shooter and the playtesting involved with that. So stick around and enjoy this deep dive into Battlefield 6. I've been looking at the behind you. Is that a photo? A bunch of photos?
Oh no, it's all Magic the Gathering cards.
Oh,
I have a problem.
You all are just really into Magic, or?
Yep.
Right.
Yep. It is an expensive hobby, but it's nice. It's something that you can go to abroad and then just immediately connect with other people.
Right.
Are you able to pick those cards out to use to play, or?
These are worthless.
Oh.
So
Nice.
Did the magnet just shoot off?
probably.
Thanks for the demonstration. Sorry for the magnet.
Yeah, it's
Nah,
all
it's
real. It's not fake. It's not just a background.
Yeah, at first I thought it was just like a bunch of photos of everyone who worked at DICE that was in the background, but it's kind of funny. There's just Magic.
No, that
Magic
picture's
the
over
Gathering
there.
cards.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that exists.
You still got that.
Yeah.
Right. Well, welcome and thank you for being here on this evening. I imagine it's like 5 p.m., 6 p.m.
Bit over 6
p.m.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for taking the evening to be here with us to talk about Battlefield, which sounds amazing. We're super excited to get into all the nitty-gritty details on this one. And also to talk about yourselves. You know, we want to get to know who you guys are and what you do, where you came from. Yeah, so welcome. I mean, I guess we can just start with that. If you guys want to sort of introduce yourself, talk about how you got to DICE, how you got into game audio. I'm sure it's very different for all three of you have very different stories. So we can start with Mari if you want to tell us about yourself.
My name is Marie, and I've been here for 18 years soon at DICE. I started as a sound design intern back in 2008. I worked on Battlefield Bad Company was my first project, and I was doing sound effects work and some trailer work and things like that for that. Been here ever since, and it's been a really, really cool journey.
Right. So you've your whole game audio career has been at DICE.
Yeah,
on Battlefield.
Exactly. So
Right.
I came from the film school, from the Stockholm University of Arts, and before that I studied sound engineering as well, and then film sound, and then from that I had an internship that I did at DICE, and then I just ended up staying.
Right. Yeah. Did you ever imagine when you started like working in sound engineering? That video games was this kind of viable route to sort of work in sound, or?
Maybe not when I started my studies in sound engineering, but then later on when I did a course in film sound at the first university I studied in, and I found that it just clicked with me. And then I really wanted to dive deeper into film sound and post-production for film. And it was just something that came very natural. And then when I then I heard about DICE and I heard about game audio, and I thought, well, I've always played games and different types of games. So I started with just a Nintendo and the Game Boy, when I was a kid. And then I thought, okay, well, that's cool. I'll see what this is all about. And I got an interview at DICE, so I went there. And I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. I didn't know much about Battlefield by then, but but then, learned a lot. The team was great and very inspiring workplace, and it's just continued to be that. So, yeah.
No, that's awesome. I'm really curious, like that first project. So it was Bad Company, you said. What was like the first sounds you got to work on?
It was this sort of video blog that the soldiers did. So it was Redford and Haggard and Sweetwater and Preston, and they did these sort of like through the camera video blogs, and I was going to simulate what that sounded like and have them. So you mixed all the sounds, and then it's like, no, and the audio director back then, Stefan, he was like, no, you have to think about the pumping effect and, the compression. I was like, okay, so you have to mix and match that sort of things and look for lots of references. So that was pretty cool.
That's a really interesting first task into game audio, because it's something so specific. I think usually when people start, usually think of maybe making ambiances or doing a bit of Foley, but that's a really specific task. It's kind of cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was we did a lot of exploration as well with Foley for the little animations and stuff like that. We recorded a lot of content for ourselves, and that then we worked on with other animations in the game. But another fun thing was actually, there's this logo with the hand grenade and the smiley face. Mm-hmm. So that I designed as well. It was like, we really need something for this thing. And it was me and another intern back then. So we did a few different concepts of what it could be, what it could sound like. And then they're like, oh yeah, we like this one. So, which was the one that I designed. And then we went with that. Yeah. So yeah, it was cool. Cool.
Well, good job. Yeah, you managed to. This is like when you boot up the game, the first sound you hear, I imagine, right?
Yeah.
That's a cool experience.
Yeah, and then it was all sorts of little cinematics and things like that. Working with the team for doing short trailers and banners and things like that we did back then as well.
Super cool. And so before we move on, so you are now like the sort of studio audio director. At DICE on Battlefield.
I'm a senior audio director here, so I also I look after the team and the day-to-day and work together with these guys to set the direction and
it's a big team to look after, so
we've grown. Probably the biggest we've ever been, but it's great.
You didn't mind if I ask, how many people in total are working on Battlefield at the moment?
How many?
On Battlefield?
Yeah.
In sounds or or just in game dev?
Oh, sorry. I meant the audio team. Yeah, sorry about that.
So the audio team at DICE, I think we're 26 people right now.
Really? Wow.
That's just at DICE.
Including audio QV, I think, as well, right?
Maybe 28.
Okay.
Well,
what?
When did that happen?
Yeah. If we count, so sound designers, tech sound designers, voiceover designers,
programmers,
production.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
QV.
Yep.
Audio directors.
Yeah. Oh yeah, those.
Yeah. Right, and that's just DICE because there's also
DICE.
Motive and Ripple Effect working on. So it's
And Criterion.
And Criterion. Okay,
Battlefield Studios.
It's
exactly.
It's a big team. Yeah. Cool. Let's just move it on then. Gonçalo, that's how you pronounce your name, right?
Yes, Gonçalo.
Gonçalo. Yeah. Why don't you tell us about your journey into game audio
Sure.
into working at DICE. Yeah.
It's a bit of a shorter journey, but I guess not that short anymore. I started about 10 years ago in the video games industry, working for Codemasters. Did a bunch of racing games, did Onrush, Dirt 5, Grid, helped out on F1 and a couple of things. And then eventually, when the opportunity came to move to Sweden and come to work at DICE, I jumped at the first sight of that opportunity.
Yeah.
And I've been here for 6 years now, which, well, it's been a long journey.
Right. Yeah. Well, 6 years is a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. Now I'm here as a technical sound designer. I was lead technical sound designer for Battlefield 6 and handled most of the MP and core systems.
Right on. Yeah. Okay.
MP, that is multiplayer.
Yeah, because it sounds like you guys at DICE are sort of, your focus is on the multiplayer aspect of Battlefield 6, right?
Exactly. Multiplayer and a lot of the shared systems as well.
Okay. Right, yeah. Yeah, because that's
anything
something
that is like weapon firing, soldier movement, all of that, that's our jurisdiction, I guess.
So does that mean that you have worked a lot with, the single player folks as well? Because I imagine, if it's all shared systems, they probably need things from you because you're at the core of it. Were you working a lot with them as well?
Yeah, every experience has their specific needs. Like everything is slightly different. We try to make it as cross-compatible as possible to minimize that. But yes, we did have to build in specific overrides for things like if in a mission the soldiers need to be quieter and have to be able to sneak around in the sewers. That's not something that you normally do in an MP level, but we have to let all of that have the space to exist as well.
Right. Yeah, I can totally relate to that as someone who's maybe worked on more linear type story games. You're always trying to break the mold. You're always trying to, what if we had this mix moment, or what if we just overrid the sort of systemic sounds for a specific sound? Yeah, I imagine they were really advantageous with that kind of stuff. But yeah, cool.
Definitely.
Yeah. And we can finish it off with David. Let's hear.
I can also add to Gonçalo. I was part of picking candidates basically when he applied, and in his application he also showcased that he was really a nerd when it comes to he was doing stuff with Dungeons and Dragons dice.
Okay,
I was like, he's really good, but also you can play board games with him probably, so it's gotta be extra
right.
bonus. Just reminded me because of the wall of magic cards.
Right. So this is all Gonçalo's doing, the magic, the gathering.
Yeah.
Okay.
This we were all sitting at the moment in my office. They have their better offices with Atmos set up and a couch and everything.
This is a bit more manageable though,
right?
For this situation.
Yeah, but I bet they don't have magic cards there, so
no.
Which
Just
one's really
couch.
better? God. So David, why don't you tell us a bit about where how you got into this?
Yeah, so I'm from Germany, and I studied there, did a Bachelor of Science, which was like media related, and this was pretty broad. This wasn't specific to audio, but audio came up, was a part of it. And I wrote my thesis on audio in motion picture, kind of as a generalist topic, kind of going through different things like how to use Foley and mixing and all that kind of stuff. That went really well. Was super interesting for me. And back then I remember I picked it because I thought, well, this is like one of the most important things for getting whatever you want to do across in film or games. But it's not as talked about or not accordingly to how important I thought it was. So I wanted to talk about it. And then after that, I studied sound design at Vancouver Film School.
Oh, right. Okay.
Which also went really well, was really fun, and really intense. Yeah, and then
So you
after
lived
that,
in Vancouver for a bit?
I lived in downtown Vancouver. Kind of seems like a luxury if you consider the housing prices. But
yeah, it's crazy there. Yeah.
Yeah, but that was a really fun time, and I learned a lot. And I remember, I think part of the reason I was picked when I applied to DICE was having that kind of in my portfolio, and also the stuff then we did there that I could put in my portfolio.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I got back home, and then I was looking for jobs first in my hometown in Potsdam, which is like there are film studios there actually. Like some big name films have been shot there, and I was thinking like I still had a sort of old fashioned mindset. It's like games are really cool. I played a lot of games, but it's like, that's my hobby. That's not a real job,
right? Yeah.
Right? So I was thinking film is more established, but it was really hard to even just get an internship, even though I was like in the city where there's film studios. But I applied to DICE and actually like got into the next round. Like there were several rounds. We had the tests that you could do or had to do. And then I got through the rounds, and eventually they picked me, was along with someone else.
Right.
And that was super much a dream come true, because when I was studying at VFS, that was BF3 had not released yet, but they brought out the trailer. Like there's that I think it's called Fault Line or something. Like it's like a 10-minute or 5-minute cut of the playthrough of that level, and it was like it blew everyone in the class away. Like we watched it together as a class, and everyone's like, "Wow, that's where I want to work," but that's never gonna happen.
Right.
And I tried, I applied, and it did happen. Weirdly enough.
Funny. Sorry to do a little bit of a sidetracking.
All good.
Funny you say that, because we also had a similar experience while I was doing my master's degree, but it was with Battlefront 1. And that's your doing.
Yeah, that was yeah, I got to DICE in the middle of Battlefield 4. I think it just started production. So it was just doing around like just getting out of pre-production. And so that was my first project, 2012.
Okay, yeah.
So we're coming up to like 14 years, I guess. Yeah, and then after that, my first project from start to finish was Battlefront 1.
Right, okay. Cool.
Which you guys liked, apparently. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always interesting, like the story you said, of just like, video games, that's a hobby. That's not something I would work in. I feel like every single person we talk to on this, they have that same thing that they say. It's just like, video games, I like them, but I never thought of that as an option. That's do people work on that? Do people do that? It's always the same thing. So it's super interesting, because then once you get into it, you realize that there's maybe more jobs in video games than there are in film. It's a lot easier to get, I would say, into games.
I would also say, like, now I'm so glad that I don't want to talk down on film. Like, that would have been cool as well. But I'm glad I ended up in games, because I think it's so much more varied. Like, film is a bit more set in stone, and how the structures are, who does what. And in games, it's still so... It's exists for a while now, but it's still pretty fresh. Like, we're still figuring out how to do it, and you do something new all the time.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
It never gets boring.
It's just constantly evolving.
Yeah, it's always something new to be working on. I guess it's a blessing and a curse. The blessing being that, like, you can work on a game for a long time and you can explore all these different parts. But the curse is that sometimes when you're on a project for so long, you wish you had those maybe shorter stints of releasing things. And I'm sure you've worked on Battlefield for quite some time, so you know that feeling of sticking to a franchise, sticking to a game for a while.
Yeah, but it is broken up pretty well by there being multiple games, and after those games release, there's DLC, which is also fresh content and can be sectioned out.
Yeah.
So it never feels like it never feels stale, I would say.
No. I think after 18 years, it just keeps on. And we are always looking like, oh, I really want to try and do this thing. Or maybe this time we can just actually get to doing that thing with audio. Or maybe we should try and prototype such this and that. But
the idea is never stopped.
You never finished.
Yeah.
Even after 18 years, you're never finished. Just feels like, you just get new ideas.
There's always these new challenges or ambitions to push the envelope further, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds also like we talked to a lot of people on this podcast, and it feels like there was a time where it was a bit easier to get in the industry than it is now. At the very least, in terms of having past experiences and all that stuff, being like, I'm fresh out of school, not sure what I'm looking for. And so making your way to DICE back in the day feels like I don't know, it's something that sounds harder to do now. So I'm just wondering how things changed, do you think? I don't know how it is at DICE specifically. I feel like with the Battlefield studios and everything, it feels like there's way more people that work on these games, but there's also way more people that want to work on these games. So I'm just wondering, like, how does that work? Let's say you could give a piece of advice, because a lot of our listeners are trying to break into the industry and look at big studios as like, these are monuments. They might appear daunting or harder to get into. So would you guys have any piece of advice on that?
We do have a really good internship program, at least I can speak from a DICE point of view. So we've had great success in taking on interns in the past few years that actually then have become employed with us as well. So there are sound design schools that focus on game audio in Stockholm, for example, but in other places in Sweden as well.
Okay.
And we've had really great success in finding new talent and then growing the team downwards and up, sort of thing. So,
it actually makes me think, like, on your team, are there a lot of like juniors, mid-level, or is it kind of even? What's the team structure?
Well, we have everything from juniors to mid to seniors. So it's quite mixed at the moment.
Yeah.
And quite a lot of the team has started as an intern.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Interesting. Do you see a benefit from having a lot of like newer people in your studio, newer people on the team? Like, does that bring something different to a production versus having, let's say, all seniors?
Well, I think it's always interesting taking in younger talent because they come in very hungry and they have also new ideas. And I think it's about, like if you want to build a strong team, it's about finding not a talent that is a replica of myself or David or Gonçalo. It's about bringing something new to the team and then building the team and the different strengths and areas of that so that everybody can bring something new. Like Gonçalo is an excellent recordist as well. So we bring him on all our recording trips. And
and I would say that there is also a balance to that. You don't want to you still want to have some seniority as a foundation. Otherwise, if you just have an influx of new people, they'll be directionless or lost probably. And we know how hard it is. Like, games are so complex, there's so much, and we know it's pretty difficult to onboard. And you want to have a certain amount of people that have gone through that process there, and hopefully not so few that they are completely busy with other stuff. So there's always a balance to that as well.
Yeah, and
No,
Sorry.
I'm sorry. Like our interns that we do a lot of mentoring, and they follow us or shadow us as well. And they go and have these specific sessions with the senior sound designers that they can just watch and ask questions and stuff like that. So it's a nice team culture in that sense.
Yeah, and I imagine that because if you take you three, for example, you have a lot of battlefield knowledge, and I think that's what the sort of seniors probably bringing. You've worked on battlefield games for a very long time. So with a lot of newer folks joining the team, do you feel like you have to sort of mentor them on sort of like, this is maybe a bit of a two-parter question, because I want to get into sort of like, the history of Battlefield a bit and sort of how that's informing the Battlefield 6. But do you feel like you need to sort of educate newer folks onto like what this Battlefield sound is? And like, is there a Battlefield sound?
I think there's always, yes, there is a philosophy that we have within Battlefield and the sound that we have. And it is an onboarding process. And we start specifically with sound designers, we start like, okay, natural sound, embracing the grit. How do we make this like, and what is natural sound? How does sound behave? How does it feel? Like physically and emotionally, and how does it impact us, and how do we read it? So,
Right.
yeah.
And it is an important part of our job as well to continually give feedback and show how we also interpret those words, because words can be interpreted in different ways. And what we sometimes do, and we would always like to do it more, but when we do it, it's very effective, have combined listening where many or most of the team listen together, and then you see like what Marie reacts to, or what I react to, or Gonçalo, or anyone else, junior to senior. But then you also see what the audio direction, where that comes from, and what that means in the moment in those examples. It's really important that we stay on that throughout the entire project. It's not like here's the direction, go. It's like here's the direction, and here are continuously reinforcement and examples of what that means.
Yeah. And this happens regardless of seniority level as well. No matter how experienced someone is, joining our team is always a little bit of a learning exercise, part because of how unique Battlefield sound is in its conception and how different our engine is to the available tools that are out there. Like mixing is completely different. Coming from projects that used Wise, jumping into Frostbite, it was a bit of a like culture shock almost. But yeah, it is important, at all levels for sure, to have this guidance.
I'm curious on that topic of just the team, the onboarding. It sounds like at DICE, you have like this great culture, these great philosophies that are very part of your DNA. It sounds almost like, since it's been with Battlefield for years now. Seeing how the scope and scale has like increased over the years, I'm just wondering, when we talk about Battlefield Studios, how do you guys sort of ensure that these principles, these values, these approaches and learnings are sort of available and shared, spread across its criterion, motive, its ripple effect, and you guys, right? It's 4.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So how does that work?
Well, you have to have a very good structure and a very, very good onboarding process. And you also need to have very, very clear examples and targets of exactly what you mean, and references. Like, we do a lot of research on anything audio that we are, or features that we're building, say, for example, which weapon or which tank. There's extensive research going into how that could sound, or finding examples, looking for libraries, and if we can't find that, we go and record it, for example. Or it could be like, okay, destruction, how does that feel? and how should it feel, or what content do we need, and things like that. So there's a lot of
we try to be very, or as consistent as we can across time zones in terms of communications. We have recurring syncs with leadership. Individual teams like voiceover or level audio have their continuous syncs. So communication is very important. Having a shared access to direction, like with examples like Marie mentioned, is important. Doing a lot of like we did a couple like all Battlefield audio team like meetings where we just show here's what's going on across the stuff. We do summits where, like, especially in terms of tech, we did several tech summits. And maybe Gonçalo, you want to go more into?
Yeah, we try to at least annually arrange either us to travel somewhere or bring the rest of the team to travel here and sit down for a week and talk about basically the full game. We go feature by feature and say, okay, vehicles, what are our dreams for vehicles? Where are we at now? What are the problems? What's the workflow issues that we're finding? How can we improve basically everything here? And like, what's our wildest dreams and how can we achieve them? And even though we are 4 studios, we try to act as much as one team as possible.
Right, because you have to make sure that everything remains consistent throughout the title, I'm assuming. It's even if the goals and mandates from a single-player game might differ from the Battle Royale or the multiplayer, core multiplayer side of things. Yeah, it sounds like it's not a simple thing.
No, and we...
No, I was just going to say, like, a lot of effort goes into, like, how do we communicate? What's our team culture? How much FaceTime do we need to have? Like, and meeting cultures as well and stuff like that. And trying to consistently push for the one team, that we're one audio team. We're always collaborating, and it's super, super important. And that's, if we can have a strong shared vision of what Battlefield audio is, then that's the key.
And there's more examples as well. Like we do recordings together. Like that's great for team building as well. Just talking about the same subject matter together, you see like where everyone's head is. It's always really good. We did like one of them. Maybe we'll talk about it later more as well. Like a huge 2-week recording extravaganza with. Many from DICE and pretty much most of Ripple Effect in the States, and many more recording sessions, often with cross studio involvement. And we have shared Slack channels. Yeah, that was in California.
Right. Okay.
We have shared Slack channels where people from North America and EU will talk about the same subject matter together in the same channels. Right.
You really need to communicate this sort of like, these singular ideas to sort of make the experience cohesive. And I think something that Mary mentioned before, sort of this naturalistic sound, is something I want to kind of explore with Battlefield 6. This idea of sort of making it feel natural. When you say that, do you mean like sort of like immersive, real? And does that actually kind of deviate from previous Battlefields? Are you going for more of a natural sound on this one than the other ones?
Me? Oh.
Yeah, you. You can start.
I was gonna wait for you. I think like that's also one of the things early in the project, like very early in the project when, it was like mostly me and Marie traveled over to the States, and we talked with Ripple Effect, the audio leads there, like just generally where do we want to go with this, and we pretty much agreed where do we think we should go. And it was kind of a bit harkening back to the Battlefield 3, 4, Battlefield 1 times. So to your question, is it different? Well, it's not that different. It's more like a continuation of that and a refinement of that. So we had like a target of what we thought was really nice and the right thing for the project at this time, for this project, and we all agreed and tried to deliver that.
It was a lot about like identifying, like in Battlefield 3 and 4, like we really liked the sound of that, and we were super happy about Battlefield 1, and we're looking at our different areas and like, okay, what did we do? What have we done in the past really well? And how did we do that? And then also like, what have we always wanted to be better at? How could we, what were the new things that we wanted to, like, that we always wished we could push for? Was it, if it was content recording, if it was systems, if it was like, how can we get even more detail in these explosions and when these things happen, like, so that we can have resonance and, you know, from the world and how the world reacts on that, or acoustics and stuff like that. So
can I just back up a few seconds here? You mentioned Battlefield 3 and 4, playing those and what you found. What was it specifically in those older ones that piqued your interest, that you want to sort of revisit maybe?
Yeah. So they have, how to put it in words? They have a very naturalistic sound, but not specifically from this is what I hear with my ears point of view, but from this is recorded with a camera, with the onboard mic on the camera in a real war zone. And that is just, for one, that's quite different to what a lot of other games do, especially at the time. Which was one of the things that made everyone go wow when we watched like the trailer of Battlefield 3. It's like, it's very immersive in the sense of you see it in a way that you see reference material, like from news or from YouTube or, you know, different sources. Like it's not immersive specifically from the sense of you are there, but from what you see of what it's like to be there, like the kind of reference that you do get exposed to. And that was pretty striking. And Battlefield 1 is less into that kind of perspective of this is a mic on the camera, less of that kind of those types of distortion, but there's also a lot of with distortion. It's a bit more cinematic and a bit more naturalistic, but it's just overall, it's such a good mix, and it feels there's an analog taste to it as well, which is also very intentional. And it's like I think one of the things we kind of highlighted early on was kind of the mix of Battlefield 1, but with some of the aesthetics of Battlefield 3 and 4 in terms of like the crunch of the assets, like how it affects the microphone and so on. So a bit of a mix of those.
There's something that makes sense also in the relationship between Battlefield 6 being a sort of return to the modern present day-ish time that 3 and 4 had. So there, it feels like there's a lot of parallels to be seen.
Yeah, it's
across
an
audio
obvious. Yeah, it's an obvious reference, and I think not just for audio. Not going to talk for the other disciplines, but I think it's pretty telling.
Right.
It's pretty.
Yeah, I feel like that really kind of Yeah, you were leading into our next point so well, just naturally. Thank you so much. So you're talking
Just
about
like
this
in
kind
the
of
rehearsal.
all this is rehearsed, every word. Yeah. No, because so you're talking about this sort of like aggressive, natural sound, and you spoke about sort of like what it would really feel like, that kind of immersiveness, which is really interesting because using that language, I can imagine a sort of gritty, raw, purely single player game having that aesthetic, but that so much counteracts a sort of like competitive shooter where all the sound cues are super important to sort of understand where you're situated in this competitive game. So can you just talk about how are you balancing these things? I mean, is there like a spectrum of sort of like certain features, certain sounds are more geared towards competitive versus immersiveness? How did you guys talk about this kind of thing?
I think that's like an ongoing balance that we try to strike with basically every feature. Like it's hard to find a happy medium that fits everyone. And each sound is different in every way. Like ambiances, we can afford to treat them a lot more immersively than anything else because they are not gameplay critical. But things like soldier movement, we do have to make some gameplay considerations there. We have spent a lot of time trying to make sure that we can hear those sounds across different scenarios while keeping a flavor that still feels real. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it like you said, it's an ongoing. Like this is probably one of the biggest challenges for us. Like, yes, we wanted to feel immersive and raw and gritty and like war, but yeah, it's also a game, and people have very different tastes as well. Some people will more appreciate the immersion side of things. Some people are in it entirely for the competitive side of things, and yeah, it's all one player base. So we have to kind of make it work as good as possible for the majority of people. But it is a different. It's the same problem, but we need also different solutions for different features. So we always need to be. It's part of the way we need to be creative is figuring out how can we satisfy this gameplay need in a way that does not contradict the audio direction. I do have an example of that, which is also, I mean, I guess if we're going to talk footsteps, we could get there anyways. But I want to take a more fun example for now, for me anyways.
Okay.
So hit indicators. When you shoot someone in a shooter, you have the reticle react and you get a hit sound. It's an entirely arcadey concept. Like fundamentally, it kind of goes against our audio direction, but we do know that it's a satisfying feature. It has that dopamine trigger, and like it's people expect it in a shooter. Unless it's like a full-on simulation, people kind of just expect it, and it does make playing the game feel good. But then the question is how do you make that work without just breaking the audio direction and going against everything that we're trying to build up? So it's about finding, first of all, the right sound that sits in the mix, or like just from a characteristic, not from how loud it is, but just from the type of content it is, that does not go against the other sounds. That when you hear a recording of the game, it wouldn't make you go, oh, here are the arcade sounds playing. It just still feels like one soundscape, like similar frequency content and so on. So we for hit indicators, we actually go very diegetic in a sense. Like we make those sounds feel like something that you could hear in world, even though they play like essentially on top of you. And some examples are more extreme for that, like when you hit a tank with a rocket launcher.
Yeah,
that's the sound of that recorded during the last project, a sound of a Carl Gustav hitting an actual armor plate. and like it's a purely natural sound. And we just say, okay, you can play. There's some sort of acceptance of how it sounds even when it's further away. Like you can play with the frequencies a bit to kind of not make it stand out in a weird way, but it always sounds natural, like as if it could be an in-world sound, even though it is a hit indicator. And then we have like glancing versions and critical versions of that. But we're trying to make it sound like diegetic, even though it's not. And then we're trying to also blend it with the mix of the weapon. So instead of overimposing it or like making it louder than the weapon so that you hear it, we don't really want to do that, because then that makes your weapon feel weaker, because that should be like first-person weapon should be, or is what we consider should be one of the loudest sounds in the game. So we carve frequencies and do a little bit of sidechain ducking in the moment of the hit indicator, that where it kind of slots into a pocket in the mix of the weapon, so it becomes an element of the weapon rather than a separate sound on top.
Timing-wise is also really important there as well, to make sure it fits with the rhythm of your fire, so that it gets the natural cadence of the event. It doesn't jump out, because weapons are an inherently rhythmic sound. So you have to like keep that rhythm tight as well, even if it is like in the offbeat of in between shots. That's when you get the hit indicator. Or
yeah. I mean, it sounds like the creative solution also has to exist within a technical framework of like, it needs to fit this tempo map almost, and be this, the loudness, everything, to avoid confusion. And I'm just wondering, because I mean, David, you brought up the dreaded topic, I feel like, of footsteps. That is the discussion everywhere when we talk about competitive shooters, especially. But how do you guys react to the sort of player feedback and internal playtests, I guess, BF Labs as well? This sort of information that you guys get, I'm assuming it gives you like, how can I say this? Like the pulse on what are player expectations specifically in the game. And then you have your mission of immersion. So like, how do you react to this?
It's something that we're constantly tuning. There's not a week that doesn't go by that we go
day almost.
Oh, I've had an idea of how we can make this feel better on this situation. Or I found an edge case where if you are behind two pillars in a row, then it sounds like you're in a different room, and we have to patch that out as soon as possible. It is a very ongoing and a constantly changing challenge. An interesting one from my point of view, especially because we do want to keep it as naturalistic as possible. We can't, like, if we wanted to go full simulation mode, if we just put a sine wave on every player, you know exactly where they are and how far they are, but that doesn't sound like a fun game. So yeah,
and on the question on feedback, there's a ton of feedback coming in for that from all angles during production. There's a lot more since the game went live, obviously, like probably in the first day since the game gone live, it's been played many times more than during the entirety of the production. Right. And people also play a little bit different when they're real players versus devs, and not saying devs play wrong or bad, but they have different priorities. Right. Because devs will try to test certain things, and they're not about like min-maxing their KD or whatever. Like they play for different reasons, and that changes both how the soundscape actually ends up in total, but also how really competitive elements like that work. And with footsteps, we knew from start of the game this is super high priority, and we immediately try to use everything we learned from previous games and could just kind of start off from there. and it looked pretty good for a while, and then more edge cases seemed to pop up, and then like when the game went live, we see a lot more cases of issues. Like some are technical issues, some are mix issues, and we are continuously working towards iterating on that. And part of the problem as well is a lot of the feedback is very opposite.
Right.
So it's not a matter of, oh, can't hear footsteps, well then just turn them up. No, it's not that simple, because
It's when and where.
yeah.
Right,
So
yeah.
half the feedback is can't hear footsteps. The other half is it's too loud, and I don't know how close the enemy is. I don't know how many there are. It's I don't know if they're behind a wall or not. And it's like you try to solve one situation and you make the other one even worse. So that's where we have to find all kinds of ways, and any tool we have to make it more situational towards what the player actually wants in that moment. And that's really challenging with this.
Take what you can carry.
Could we actually dive into the footsteps, like maybe more specifically? Like,
Sure.
can you tell me, when are you hearing enemy footsteps the most?
I can. How technical do we want to get?
As technical as you want.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's as technical as I feel like it's relevant. We have a priority system that defines how important each soldier is. That is based on distance, of course, but also on team alignment. So your friends will be a lot less important than your enemies, because your friends hopefully are not shooting at you.
Also, on that note, something that's just how the game plays, you will usually be more surrounded by your friends than by your enemies. So they will always be a bit closer on average. There will be more on average nearby. So that's also what we need to take into account for that.
So we do have essentially a standardized distancing that we scale these players to. I believe friendlies, we scale them down up to essentially non-existence at 35 meters. So you will just not hear a friendly's movement beyond 35 meters, while enemies, that is around 120 meters, that it gets the equivalent attenuation and down mixing and down prioritization as a friendly. So that slots us into a ordered system of who is more important than not, based on this type of criteria. Of course, dead soldiers and crawling soldiers on the ground, they'll also be down prioritized in this stage as well. And after that point, we try to play sounds on as many of them as possible. And we use the actual sound signal to remove away the ones that are less important. So we end up playing the loudest ones before the ones that are quieter.
Yeah, got it. Okay. So it sounds like folks that are standing up, running, even if they're not super close to enemies, those are the ones that are sort of the loudest in the mix. And I imagine they get boosted at that point if they're really close to you.
So enemies are about 350% louder than friendlies, even though
50%.
So it's surprising, because people will still give feedback that they think friendlies and enemies are the same, or friendlies are loud or louder, just because of context. Like they do care about the enemies a lot more, and when they have friendlies around, they don't care so much about them. and then just by context, it feels like, oh, why are they so loud? And they are so like friendlies are actually lowered more than what is natural in multiplayer, at least. And enemies are boosted way beyond what is natural. But that also gets into another issue, which is telling how close someone is. Because the player understands kind of how close something is based on frequency content, but also just how loud something is, right? And when you hear gunfire and explosions, and then you hear footsteps that sit at a pretty high level, within that, you will assume they are probably pretty close. So if you just boost them so much that you can hear them in a war scenario, they might sound completely confusing in terms of their actual distance and place. And also,
Right.
we do also consciously limit how many you can hear, where we hyper prioritize enemies. So there is like a bucket of how many pairs of footsteps, so soldiers you can hear, and friendlies and enemies go into that. But if the bucket gets full, enemies get more slots.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this is to also not over deliver information, because too much information is just chaos.
Right.
So we do need to filter it down to something that it is perceivable.
We had in one of the patches, we actually we opened up how many enemies you can hear, just because we're trying to get to the bottom of one of the technical issues where sometimes it seems like a soldier is just silent. This is an ongoing frustration for us. Like we never see it in our dev environments. We only see it live,
Right.
which is frustrating for the players, and it's very frustrating for us because we can't debug. And so we did a lot of deep diving, trying to figure it out. That was one of the things we tried, but that wasn't it. So now, but that led to other issues. It's like you hear like a million footsteps coming from a building, and it's just like, okay, well, what does that even mean? Like, so it's like everything is, like I said earlier, it's like almost the opposite problem. For anything you do, you open up a new problem. Right. So it's a constant balancing act.
Yeah.
And
And I
on the
imagine
mixing-
that go for it.
Sorry. I was just one more note that we also use the signal of the footsteps to lower the game in the direction that those footsteps are coming from, at least enemies.
Right. Okay.
And that allows those frequencies to carve out a tiny bit more than if we were to just play them louder.
Right, so
Yeah,
that frequency range of the footsteps is being carved out sort of in weapons, in ambiances, everywhere?
There's a distinction. We allow it to carve out over some sounds and not over some other sounds. So that's
over most sounds,
most sounds.
but not not other footsteps, and not weapons from enemies that are firing at you.
Right. Okay.
Because they need to, then you get into a situation, someone runs up to you and shoots you, and their gun is lowered because they had footsteps. Like, you don't want to have that.
Yeah,
either.
that seems counterintuitive a bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the whole question of threat level, basically, I guess, comes into play. And
It's literally called threat.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. It also sounds like making sure that players only hear what's relevant to them. I'm just thinking the game, like, we're going to dive into this a bit further in an interview, but the question of like sound pathing, the whole acoustics, is it above, below me? All those questions feels like if you were to hear all footsteps super loud, someone running above, someone in front of you, someone behind you, all the same, it would just be chaos, right? So it's good for just processing information. You can only process so much as a player. Is there any other areas, like David, you were mentioning about the hit markers, and I feel like there's also the footsteps that we were just talking about, but also the whiz-bys. Is there any other tricks like that where you I guess, reinforce the sort of player perceptions regarding just gameplay information and all that stuff?
Yeah. I can start with.
Sure.
So the bullet pass-bys, which is whiz-bys and bullet cracks when they're supersonic, breaking the sound barrier. So we treat them differently in the mix compared to most other sounds, because you don't want to have the bullets fight with the weapon that is firing them. So they both need to coexist and not have like the bullets push down the weapon that you can't hear anymore. So they live in separate mixes, essentially. And also something we do more in this game than previous games, which is also, we played, by the way, we didn't mention, but we played with the audio team. We had some sessions where we played older Battlefield games as well. And some of the things that kind of came back as well when we played like BF4s can be very disorienting when you get fired at, understanding where it's coming from. Because if you have bullets passing you left and right, because someone's probably not going to hit every shot, or at least if they're me, they're going to pass a bit. And you get bullet cracks all over, and you got the weapon firing. Those are several poppy sounds all over.
Yeah.
So it's realistic, but it's confusing in the moment for when you want to play the game. And so we actually we had a bias created. We started doing this in BF5, but only very lightly, where the bullet pass-bys get panned towards the shooter. And now we do that much stronger, because we're, like, most people probably even don't know that we do this, because we're trying to find a balance where you don't notice that we're not trying to be too heavy-handed, so that it breaks the illusion, but still gives you the information that you want.
I guess on the topic of acoustics that are really shaped by gameplay and really change how the sound works, one of the things that we've worked on the most in this project was our obstruction and occlusion system. Previously, we did not have an occlusion system in Battlefield. Well, we had something we called occlusion, but it was essentially just vehicle cabin occlusion. But talking about more specifically occlusion of being in a completely enclosed room versus being just behind a wall. That is something that we can use both for aesthetic reasons, say controlling the mix to get sounds that are less important out of the way, carving frequencies out of vehicles so that we don't have constant low humming engines from vehicles that are not that near to you or not that threatening, as well as gameplay. As in, we can carve out more space for the user to hear the sounds that matter by gathering information about things that don't matter because they're nowhere near you.
Right.
So the classic example is, as I was talking, a tank. If it's behind a wall, it's still a threat.
Right.
Any movement that thing does, it'll just hit the wall slightly, and your building's crumbling down on top of you, and you're in danger. So it still needs to sound just as big as if you were outside next to it, because it's a threat. It's a real threat. But if they are on the other side of a building block, then that is completely different. Then they can almost just be removed from the mix because they're not relevant for you at the moment.
So these enclosed areas, is what we're talking about, for the most part, buildings. Oh, sorry, hit my mic. Buildings, or maybe just closed off, sort of. Is it even closed off exterior areas as well that are?
Yeah.
Okay.
Say like something like a cave would have the same sort of behavior. We try to treat systemically, everything works quite location agnostic. So that we don't have to do per situation solutions. It should just work. So
but it is important that the levels team tags the right area types.
exactly, yes.
Oh, right.
We
That's
still
nice.
have some manual processes to do, but we try to make sure that it's all as runtime as possible, because the levels change drastically as you play. And yes, things will behave differently based on how occluded something is inside or outside, or in the different combinations of these parameters.
Yeah, so you're in a building, let's say, and destruction is a huge part of this game. I imagine you have portals on sort of windows and doors. As the building starts to decay, are there sort of like dynamic portals that are being sort of propagated in places? How does that work?
We do not do portaling yet.
Oh, there's no portals. Okay.
No, because destruction is such a large part of it. The portaling is still one of the challenges that we might try to address at some points. We do some faking of portaling. We have a system that we call openness, because we're very original in names, and that just tells you how open a space is. And that is, let's say you were in a building and you blow out a window, then you get some openness from this area. So normally you'd just bleed in some of the outside ambience. Now we also bleed in some of the outside ambience and pan it towards that opening, so that it feels like it's the window that's bringing in the sound, even though it's just a quad.
Is it just like basically using a line of sight with obstruction, basically, to define what is audible clearly versus what is sort of filtered being outside?
It is a mix of things. We use, as David said, we have manually tagged area types that we can use to compare things. So if the listener is in an indoor area type and the sound source is in an outdoor area type, we can use this to scale the processing that's happening. But we do have a raycast solution that gets us that line of sight information. It's not just a direct line of sight. Each sound has a size and a shape that contributes to this. But also we have listener-based raycast sphere that gets information about the space that's around you, and all of these systems together add up to the result at the end.
Cool.
There's a lot of, like, we have a lot of tools, but there's still a limitation versus real life, of course. So we're trying to use the pieces that we have in a way that can fake a result that feels natural and appropriate. Like we do a lot nowadays with comparing, new word invented just now.
Sounds good.
Comparing if the listener is outside and there's an explosion at this distance and it is fully obstructed, well, it's still in the same space outside, so you can imagine the sound can bounce around more. So we don't apply that much filtering as if the explosion were in an indoor space when you are outside and it's fully obstructed. So we're using each parameter to come up with kind of cases where we want to apply certain rules to.
One of the things that is also very important in this point of view is that we're trying to put a lot of detail into the things that will benefit from that detail. So we've built systems so that they are customizable and bespoke, so that we can, say, make vehicles sound like they need to sound, but a tree rustling does not need or have to have the same amount of detail that a vehicle or a gun or a soldier or an explosion should have. So
by detail you mean obstruction calculations, right?
Yes. I mean, detailed work in terms of how it sounds in different scenarios.
The content is still supposed to be detailed.
Yes, the content.
Supposed to.
Yeah. The content still gets a lot of love. Yeah, the content still gets a lot of love, but from the systemic point of view, we treat it as like, it's something that is there. and
Yeah.
there's a default processing that applies, and that's it.
For sure, you have to prioritize, and it's cool hearing all this because it sounds like this tree of scoping systems. We talk about just the Foley, just the footsteps, and what's prioritized there. But then if you zoom out, how does Foley stack up against weapons and all this kind of stuff? So it's like this branching scoping system. It sounds like it's a lot to sort of wrap your brain around all that when you're mixing. I imagine at some points you're like, wait, what's more prioritized, this or that? It can easily get lost in that kind of thing.
Yeah, we need to be semi-strict in having some sort of overall guidelines in terms of how loud things need to be and how loud then similar things are. So that's one of the earliest things we did in the project, kind of establishing what is ambience level, where does Foley sit, and where does weapon sit, where does ambient war sit in the mix, how loud are the reverbs, where would a close explosion be in that mix, and then everyone can use that as guideline for where things need to be. And we don't. We use the HDR system where we assign loudness values to sounds, and we try to be quite strict about what value a category of sound gets, where we don't deviate. Otherwise, yeah, like you said, it's gonna be, you can't wrap your head around it. You need to kind of think in types of sound, like jets, helicopters, soldiers, sniper rifles, assault rifles, like kind of like that.
But this was also like very, very early on in the project. There was a visual target that the team worked on, and it was like a slice of a level, and this is how it should sound and how it should look like and how it should play and stuff. And so we used that and did the audio target for that. Like, this is how we implement, this is our holy mixed triangle between footsteps, weapons and ambience, because those are like the cornerstones of the mix. And then on top of that, then we added ambient warfare, we added scripted events and explosions, and voiceover as well, just to try showcase like, okay, this is the target, and this is it sets like an example for the rest of the team as well, and new team members, they can go into this level and they can look at it and listen to it, and I see the different workflows and implementations, but also the style and tone of the project.
Right.
And
I
we
imagine
do have like quite often we do just have reference recordings of the game to see how it sounds. And David's the one that normally maintains all of that. Whenever something sounds different, he goes back in time and sees, how did it sound a couple of months ago? What are we deviating from?
Then I get very upset and like, why is this different? What changed now?
Yeah.
What is it now?
Yeah.
No.
So as they were saying, we enforce that at the start of the project and try to keep that mixed triangle as accurate from start to finish.
Yeah.
It's
I imagine
actually
you have
super close to what we said in the beginning.
Yeah, because you imagine you're really strict about these types of guidelines, like ambience needs to sit in certain frequency range, certain loudness. I imagine it just didn't deviate from that. Once it was set, that's what it was, kind of thing.
Well, it was fine-tuned, but the overall aesthetic of that, where how the mix was then, is still the same.
Attention, we have lost control of Zoom.
There's one kind of sound we haven't talked about yet, and it's the whole first person, I guess, player sounds. Feels like naturally I would think I'm curious to hear your thoughts, but I would think that this is a great use for like an anchor in terms of like a mix, because you can define these, how loud your footsteps are for your perspective and all that stuff. I'm just wondering, how did you guys use these sort of like first person sounds? And is there any sort of specific treatment or differences versus the third person sounds that we hear?
Well, they are. That's one of the cornerstones, as Marie said. Nice word, by the way. For the mixed triangle is ambience, and when we say Foley, we primarily mean first person Foley and then first person weapon. And so that's very important as a cornerstone, especially how it interacts with the ambience. Where like when you walk really slowly, where that compares to the ambience, and then how sprinting shoots above and so on.
And also quite together with that is voiceover. All the movements, we try to add some breathing and some efforts to give some physicality to just the movement as a soldier. We have used quite a particular technique to record all the voiceover for first person, where we have a shotgun microphone like strapped on to whoever is recording efforts or voiceover lines to their chest, so we get like a more boxy feeling, more enclosed space to get a little bit of a different perspective than from a 3P. And
so it's a shotgun microphone that's just right here, just facing upwards, or
just into like the throat.
Okay. Right. So you hear it more like you would perceive your own voice.
It's a filter, almost like a naturalized filter of all of that content. It's not necessarily exactly how you'd hear your own voice, but the brain tends to learn patterns and to figure out how a thing is supposed to sound by the last thing it heard. So if you hear something with a specific coloring and always associated with that, it's kind of like solidifies itself in the listener's mind as this is that thing.
Right, you kind of have to exaggerate it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and instead of recording it with a microphone, say like here, we wanted to have a very distinct, a very specific distinction between if it's me as the soldier speaking or the person next to me. And then because we wanted to capture these two perspectives at the same time when we did the voiceover recordings, and having the chest on the mic is something we experimented a lot and used a lot in Battlefield 1 as well.
Oh, okay, right. Okay.
Because of the physicality and because we wanted to have this specific sound. Then we did a huge tech test in pre-production for Battlefield 6 with voiceover tech test, where we went to a studio and we had 4 actors because we wanted to simulate recording a squad. And then on top of this, we were like, okay, which microphones do we want to have? Which type of microphone do we want to have on the chest, and where should we place it? And then Gonçalo printed like several different prototypes of, these vests.
3D printed.
Yeah, 3D printed, like
Okay,
microphone ones.
Amazing.
That we now have in production. We have sent those like to the other studios that are recording VO. But then that allowed us also, and then we tested a ton of different microphones, ton of different movement techniques with the actors, as well as them wearing different gear or having like rucksacks with weights in them, just to get that sort of in the moment delivery of the soldier voiceover lines and stuff. And then like, okay, and if we need to be in a studio, which third person mic should we have, and how can we capture, because we don't want to post-process that, because there's a ton of video that we need to record, and we want to streamline that production as quickly make it as efficient as possible as well. So there's a lot of experimentation.
We don't want to process it too much regardless.
We just want to...
Every little bit takes some humanity away from the recordings.
Yeah.
Is there any other elements of the player sounds or player movement in general that's been sort of colorized that way with specific miking and all that stuff? Because I feel like there's a lot of games where there sometimes can be confusion in regards to, am I hearing my own footsteps or is it another player and all that kind of stuff? But I don't feel like this happens in the Battlefield games typically. So I'm just wondering, is it different data completely or?
It is the same data with add-ons. So
Okay.
we add on a lot of sounds just for the local player point of view that are not present in the third-person point of view. The easiest one is there is a little bassy thump on every single footstep, but that only happens on your own footsteps because that's more trying to replicate not your feet hitting the floor, but your whole chest moving up and down because that has an interior thump to it as well.
Of course.
And as well as like wind in your ears, all of your clothes rattling, all of that is mixed slightly different to get that perspective across. And as well as when we do record footstep contents on different materials, we always try to record not following along the person that is running, but the person that is running themselves is the one that holds the microphone at around the place where their ears are. So you're getting a similar perspective of it as if you were the one running. And that ends up getting a lot of other detail along with it. So it'll get your pants moving around and your jackets and vests moving, and that is fine. That is part of the grit that colors the Battlefield soundscape.
Sounds like you guys did a lot of like experimenting when it came to recording, and now it makes sense when David, you mentioned that there was a big field recording trip that the team did. I kind of get it more now. It sounds like you really, for Battlefield 6, were trying to push the envelope and from the source how you got your content. Can you talk a bit about those trips and what you recorded, what you got from it?
Yeah, just on the, I guess you were talking about Foley.
Foley, yeah.
We did several days recording Foley for all kinds of different weapons. Like it was a big portfolio of weapons that we recorded for days. And part of that is also just what they sound like when you run with them. So we try to perform running and different speeds and shaking them, and then adding details from different guns. Like we didn't record every gun that is in the game, but we try to go for a broad selection of kind of materials and sizes, and as close as we can get to what the game kind of needs. Then we can have categories, and so when you run with an assault rifle, you get some of those recordings that we recorded there, or when you run with an LMG, something else.
Right.
And then we try to be more mindful of there's a ton of gadgets in the game, and when you carry those, when you run with them, they also have their details that gets added to your movement, and just adds more physicality in the moment. And the recording trips.
You were all part of it.
We
all
did a ton.
Yeah. Well, there was the biggest one was in 2023 in California. That was like a combined studio audio teams endeavor. We recorded Foley, but we recorded a ton of shooting. We recorded destruction. For 2 weeks, I think, straight.
Yeah. When we were, how many recordists? Like 15, 16 recordists.
Yeah.
Each
Wow.
one of us with multiple microphones each, all of us from different perspectives, different angles,
Distances.
different distances.
Right. Okay. All recording, like say the destruction. Everyone has their
Yes.
kit pointing at something different.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even like guns, we might be recording in an alley, but someone was down inside of a building in a different room. Someone was behind the building. Someone was like right on top of the weapon, to get all of those different perspectives.
Yeah, that's a lot of content to go through afterwards. Did you sync it at all? Like, it's you had a gun shooting session. Was it separate, or did you try to sync these together?
As in afterwards?
Yeah. Like in editing.
I've built a little software that syncs
Of course, yeah.
everything together based on time code, but not all recorders have time code or metadata information, so there was still some manual processing needed to be done. Luckily, guns are really easy to sync because it's just one huge clap that happens all at the same time, so that is quite a lot easier than the destruction sessions, because destruction is a lot more chaotic than gun shooting. And then this software, you get like a picture of Google Maps of where we recorded and we place where everyone's microphones were set, and that just gets all of the metadata into the files. So you end up with like a AK-47 in this area type at 100 meters at 27 degrees behind the shooter.
Okay.
Something like that.
That detail. Yeah.
It helps when you have that much content to have it be well sorted.
Yeah, no, for sure. I imagine it's I think it isn't in the A Sound Effect article, Mary, you mentioned how sort of recording these kinds of weapons gives you a different outlook on it. You know, it's one thing to hear it in a game, but I imagine when I've never shot a weapon in my life, so I have actually no idea, but I imagine it changes how you think about it. Yeah.
I think so. And I mean, because I think a lot of the recordings that we do, it's so important to understand, like we can have to sort of feel the sound as well, because it's so loud when it happens. And even if you're at a distance, there's this sort of push in your chest or something like that. Like when you heard the 50 cal or when you hear the AK-47, and like there's a huge difference there. And they all feel unique and have their characteristics. But then it's also like we did a tree destruction recording here in Sweden as well, because we were like, okay, we're doubling down on destruction. We've never done tree destruction. Like we've always felt like we missed certain content. And then when you hear these big trees coming down as well, you're like, wow, I didn't know it did that.
Right.
Or I didn't know that this sound behaved like so. So it's such an exploration and also understanding how loud sounds behave. And then maybe some sounds aren't as loud as you think that they are. And then you're like, okay, but how can I find or other destruction sounds, say, for example, for building destruction, you know, we have libraries with excellent content, but then you feel like, oh, I've always missed sort of having more variation of this, and how can I find that? Because I want to find the content with the interesting stories in it, that you then can modify and create new content and more variations from and stuff. So that was also something that we really, really wanted to double down on when it came to destruction.
On the guns as well, I feel like everyone or anyone who hasn't heard weapons in real life will always be startled by how loud they actually are. Yeah. Like, it's ridiculous. And it's also interesting how even through hearing protection, your ears react to those extreme spikes. And you can use that as well then when you design, trying to recreate a little bit how your ear deals with extreme spikes and loudness, how it does some compression in, like however it works organically.
Right.
So
it distorts your ear in a way.
Yeah. And I think it's super important to hear it in real life to get that perspective, and not just like have perspective from movies or other games.
And also understand how the environment actually resonates and how the sound behaves in these different environments.
Yeah, we're super nerdy when it comes to reflections. We always go around like clapping and like, oh, and like, oh, interesting. And we're like connoisseurs for interesting slapbacks. And
how do you capture that when you're recording, let's say, guns? How do you properly capture reflection? I've actually never even thought about that, really.
It's really about just getting as many perspectives as possible, because the gun itself has some flavor, but the environment is the one that is performing the most when you are doing that type of recordings. One of the things that I really enjoyed doing on those recording sessions, I was doing distance recordings while David was doing quite close up. I actually just took off my hearing protection because I was about 100, 200 meters away, and it was still loud, but just hearing it with your own ears, then you can see where the sound travels into space. Like in the canyon, you could see, you could imagine or almost visualize the reflection point just scan through the mountain line, come back, and once you hear it with your ears, then you know what you want to hear it through the microphone, because your microphone should be a replacement for your ears, essentially.
And you get inspired for what you want to do in game and like what we want to do in future projects. Like there's still such a road ahead in terms of what we can do, because sound is incredibly complex. And when you shoot a gun in a mountainy space, like there's so much going on. It travels outwards and it comes back at different angles. It bounces around. Like it's not like Foley, which is you hear the immediate distance and reverb of that immediate space. But with a weapon or an explosion, you get a flavor from the entire landscape around. Everything colors the overall sound you get. And that's that's a super interesting problem for us to solve. A lot of it we try to solve through smoke and mirrors, like just faking it through good recordings in the right situation, but we can go deeper and deeper into that.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys had the luxury of, since you attended the recording sessions, having that luxury of knowing how these loud sounds feel and how they're perceived through just perceptions, not just sonically. It feels like you must have had to sort of translate those feelings into effects, I guess, or treatments and integration to convey that sense of intensity. Can we talk a bit about that? Because I know we talked about saturation already, going like sounds are almost distorting sometimes or clipping, and just sidechaining and all that stuff. I'm just wondering, like, how'd you translate those feelings into processes?
I think there's a good example on that is jets, where you go to an air show, you listen to jets. It's like the most amazing thing in the world. It's just so impressive to hear them. And we got pretty close, I think, in the game with how believable jets sound, but they also pose a problem for the entire mix, because if you have such a full sound, you don't really hear anything else. But it's a competitive shooter. You want to hear other stuff as well. So that's something since launch where we have gone deeper in terms of making it more situational. We still want jets to be super awesome when you want them to be super awesome. But when they're just like circling around in the distance doing their thing, we want to find ways to remove them a bit from the mix so you can focus on other things. And that's kind of a constant challenge with this type of game, where all these individual things, when you experience them in real life, tanks, weapons, explosion, jets, like they're just overwhelmingly impressive individually, but you can't just have them be that impressive all the time when you put them in the game, because you're gonna have a complete sausage of a mix, you're not going to hear anything. So it's about letting things be awesome in the right moment and finding moments when you can subdue them a bit, both in terms of frequency content and also just overall level. Like another thing we do, for instance, with tanks, when a tank is further away and it's not pointing towards you and it's going somewhere else, we reduce some of the low end and muddy, like 300, 400 hertz frequencies to ease up a bit on the mix, because those are constant sound. It's not going to be the only tank in the mix either. There's going to be several of these constant looping things all over the place. So always finding ways to remove from these impressive sounds in a way that is not noticeable by the player.
Yeah, it always comes down to reduction. Essentially, we have a fixed bandwidth of where we can put sound in. It's 0 to 1 or -1 to 1 in a speaker point of view, and we can only make things sound big by making other things sound smaller.
Yeah, I think overall, I mean, it just, you can't avoid it being loud though, right? Which I find super interesting. You know, we want to make a sort of a mix that kind of pleases the ear and it's not too fatiguing. But like if you play a match, well, everyone's shooting at each other all the time. It's almost unavoidable. I mean, at what point do you just sort of, I guess, accept a certain loudness? And like, what is that target value actually, like for a match?
There is a. It's not something we entirely like religiously adhere to. There's like a -23 thing there that
Right.
some people adhere to, but like if we also look at competitors and so on, and it's you know, there's a loudness war between games and franchises that's unavoidable, unfortunately. One of the reasons that number exists is to avoid that, but you know, it happens anyways. We're trying to not deviate too much, at least in our high dynamic range mix.
Right.
So we're trying in the high dynamic range mix. We're trying to have quite a big difference still between loud and quiet, so that it's not constantly fatiguing. We're like Gonçalo said, it's about reduction. It's about finding ways to make things quieter. This goes for any core sound, weapons, vehicles, explosions, everything. If it's like not pointed towards you and it's off screen and it's far away, like reduce these frequencies. Like making the things that matter punch through more. But at the same time, it's still a balancing. It's a matter of balance, because our players have many times told us they want it to be loud. They want it to be almost oppressive, because they want it to be a war soundscape.
And that's kind of where War Tapes comes in.
Yeah.
Just gonna say that. Yeah. So there's War Tapes, and then there's another one I was just playing the other day. War Tapes. What's it called? Vow.
Yeah.
Yes. Which is intense, and it's so funny because all the stuff we're talking about, this getting, you know, dynamic range and a sort of a balanced mix, it kind of just flips that on its head just naturally.
Goes out the window.
Yeah,
well, there's a reason. There's a reason that's not the standard mode, even though it is quite popular. Like it's surprising. Like when the beta launched, it surprised me certainly how many people were using these modes and talking about it. I almost felt like bad. It's like, oh, not. I hope it's not. That's not gonna be the version that you see online all the time now. Yeah, and it sometimes is. Like it goes hard on the aesthetic of being like something like a camcorder in a real war zone, where you have a lot of built-in limiting and compression, where the peaks really get crunched down, and then basically everything is loud all the time. and it's a cool aesthetic. It's a lot more fatiguing, of course. A lot of mix considerations go out of the way. Like we mentioned earlier, enemy footsteps are 300 to 400% louder than friendlies. Like that gets compressed down to much less difference. And then we also, it's another reason why when we get feedback, it gets more complicated, because then sometimes it turns out, oh, they were playing in war tapes, so that's why they couldn't tell the difference. So yeah, we don't use it as our primary way of reacting to feedback, because you can't. Like we use our default mix and our high dynamic range mix as kind of the way we mix the game. And then war tapes is a flavor that the player can choose at their own discretion.
Right.
And I think it's cool as well, but for a time, maybe not for hundreds of hours.
We do get to sneak it in one of the features in the game, which is when you're in the deploy screen, you have the we call it the pip cam, person in person, that we do essentially route the whole game through a even more aggressive version of the war tapes mix. But since it's a tiny little screen, we can just lower it down, and it feels. I feel like it feels super cool.
Same processes, just cranked up to 11?
Yeah, essentially. There's a couple more things on top. We mono it down because it's a small picture on your screen, and it gets individual randomization based on who you're following. So when you change from soldier to soldier, all of these parameters get tweaked a tiny bit, so it feels like a different camera.
Interesting.
I also distinctly remember early in the project when we had the pip first implemented that I thought that was the best sounding version of the game, watching someone through the pip cam, because it felt really, really realistic in the sense of it really looked like you're watching someone's GoPro or whatever. Like it was really real immersive in that sense.
It does have one of my favorite sound features that is very rare, because it needs to be rare to be able to sound good, which is if you are following someone that's in a tank, like an Abrams, one of the main battle tanks, and they shoot their main cannon, that normally is so loud that it will we actually force the signal to just die out for a couple of seconds, like it would in an actual recording, because it just goes and
breaks
gone.
the camera.
Oh, that's rad.
Yeah.
Cool.
It sounds cool, but it needs to be very sparing.
Yeah, I bet. On that topic, I feel like there's the question of just making sure. I mean, we could talk about across all of the listening profiles or audio mix settings, but more specifically, I guess, with the default mix settings, like there is a lot of effort clearly has been put in the mix and making sure there's a clarity within all that battlefield chaos. Is there any sort of specific challenges or things that you didn't see coming when it comes to Battlefield 6 specifically versus the previous entries that you had to deal with?
Nothing really super surprising. Like everything is a continuation of similar challenges. It's one thing. I still wouldn't say it's surprising, but again, footsteps is just the importance of it has changed in players' perspective or perception over the years. Like in Battlefield 3, you can't even hear footsteps that are behind you because the animation isn't running and there are no footstep triggers. That's something that was solved afterwards with, like timer-based footsteps. In that case, when the animation doesn't run, but it's like hardly anyone complained about that then, and they were very low as well. Like they weren't loud at all. They weren't boosted to 350% like we do now. But the perception has changed, and what is important has changed, and people are more tuned to competitive mixes nowadays. I feel like so that is just something where we can't just full on go, let's just do exactly like BF4, BF1, because the players have changed a bit as well. So we have to kind of adjust a bit towards that, and what are kind of modern expectations, again, without breaking our idea of what the game should sound like.
Huh. Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, I think we're getting about to that time. You know, it's we've covered so much. Is there anything before we wrap things up? We always have a final question for you guys, but is there anything you wanted to mention before we get there? Anything that comes to mind? We can just get on with it then.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the question we always ask people when they come onto the podcast is sort of like, if you can give yourself some advice when you first maybe started the project, what would that be in terms of like, now that from your perspective of having shipped it, you know, obviously you're still working on it, but having shipped the core of the title, what advice would you have for yourself when you just started working on the game?
I don't know. There were some. We had to be very conscious about time and what we can do, and we were like, especially me and Marie, were really hammering home on, let's work as much as we can with what we know that works from past experience. Let's not try to reinvent the wheel because we don't know if it's going to go well by the time we launch the game. So, and there were maybe a few things where we could have been even stricter. I don't want to go too much into details, but it's like hindsight. I don't think we did anything wrong really. But if with the knowledge we have now, we could say, yeah, you could have saved time there if you just switched earlier to something else. But it's like in that's with having the future knowledge, which everyone would like to have.
Yeah, everyone wants that. It's a hot commodity. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think it was it was really interesting in the beginning of the project because we sort of set a vision together, and we had this long list of all the things, all the dreams that we wanted to do, sort of, and all the ideas gathered. And me and our audio DD, we went through this list not long ago and just like, wow, we did so many things of all of these things. And we explored so much, and we had fun along the way with the team as well, like with all these recording trips or the prototyping we did and all of those things. And in hindsight, I want to, like, if I think, I was like, we did that really well. Remember this and take that with you for the future.
Yeah.
And if there would be something I would say, it's like, yes, it's super good to have clear targets early on. Mm-hmm. And also documentation is a bliss.
Yeah. I totally imagine that's the case with such a big team that...
because I think if we would have had more of that early on, it would have been saved some time in onboarding. Gladly, it's something we've focused on, so yes.
Feels like that's the learning everyone should have made across all productions in the entire, like, every industries that are creative and tech, and just
document.
Yeah, it's always document more, and then it comes to the next production and you're like, oh, I should have done even more. It's yeah, it's that one that gets away. What about you, Gonçalo?
Yeah. It was perfect.
It's a hard one
Oh.
because I'm not sure what I would tell my past self to do different, because I've made a lot of mistakes along the way, but all of those inform the future. And if I hadn't made those mistakes, then I would eventually run into them again.
Right. Yeah.
So
you should have a
just
Jira
make as
that
many
is
mistakes as I
just-
can.
Yeah,
Jira that is
Yeah.
make mistakes.
even if
yeah.
you tell someone about a mistake, it's not the same as making it yourself.
Right.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
It's that
I mean, your
So,
piece of
yes.
advice can be just to get more Magic the Gathering cards, and that also works.
No, but it's important to try and fail.
Yes.
Because that's
Right.
when you learn, right?
Yeah. So yeah, that's what I tell to my past self, which is try, try and fail until it works.
Do you find that like on Battlefield 6 or just in general that you have enough time in your sprints, your milestones to experiment, to fail? Because that's the thing, right? If we have time, there's always that sort of luxury of like, let me
that's a
try
tricky
something
one.
out.
That I don't think we should.
I mean, it never is the case, right? When you're in production, it's always like, we don't have enough time for this. Yeah.
I would say I try to do this for myself at least, which is to underplan. Plan enough to be busy out of half of the sprint, because the other half of the sprint is going to be busy with the things that happen along the way.
Yeah.
Because especially in a technical role, everyone always has problems. Everyone always needs help. There's always fires that need to be put out. And you need to have the availability to be there to help put out those fires. And if there's no fires, then great. Then that's room to start experimenting in some pet projects and trying some cool new features that you have some ideas for.
Yeah, time is the most important resource for sure, and that shouldn't be surprising to anyone. And it makes you learn to prioritize. So prioritizing is important, and also a clear deadlines and a limit in time can be a good thing as well, because it can make you focus on the right things rather than just going in circles on something forever.
Right.
And just make impactful, effective decisions that maybe get you 98% of the way there instead of 100%, which is just who's going to notice the difference?
Yeah.
Right. No one. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Well,
All right.
I
On
think
that
that's
note, I feel, yeah.
Thanks so much for taking part of your evening to chat with us today. It was I feel like I've learned so much.
Yeah, same here.
And an
a
hour and
blast.
48 minutes has just flown by. So thank you so much.
Think of an eye.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It was fun.
Yeah, it was great.
All right.
Looking for more audio-related podcasts to listen to? We're part of the Audio Podcast Alliance, featuring a hand-picked selection of the very best podcast about sound. Be sure to hear the latest episodes from our friends in the community at audiopodcast.org.